Hey, you're listening to the Vittles and Villains podcast, a podcast extension of the nonprofit that educates and engages individuals on mental health awareness through pop culture. I'm your host, Black Nerd Magic, and on this episode, we are talking about 2016's Best Picture Oscar winner, Moonlight. Hope you enjoy.
What you doing in here, little man? Come on now. Can't do no worse out here.
You live with your mama?
I hate her.
Well, so you gonna raise my son now?
You gonna raise him?
What's wrong?
You good?
I done seen good, and you ain't it.
You ain't gonna love me, but you gonna know that I love you.
Moonlight, rated R, now playing in select theaters.
Plus, I did not realize this actually had won Best Picture in 2016. It is well-deserved, and I feel so ashamed that this is my first time watching this movie. What's up? It's Captain Nostalgia here. All right, and we are joined on this episode by our friends over at the Ghouls-next-door, Kat and Gabe.
Hello.
Hello. I am here.
It was also my first time watching this.
Same, yeah.
But it was always on the to-do list. Like, it was always there. Always waiting.
Yeah, I have to say, it is... The Ghouls rarely give a 10 out of 10, but 10 out of 10. Like, both of us were like, I'm gonna watch it again when this episode's over. Like, such a great movie. Yeah.
You're showing your hands way too early. I feel like this too is the first time that we've had you guys on the episode, on the podcast, and not talking about something in the sci-fi or horror realm. So this is an interesting to kind of like gauge you guys as like more personal and artistic sides.
Yeah, we watch other stuff. we get out of our comfort zone of spooky and you know, real life people doing real life things.
When you watch a horror movie every week for 3 years, it's definitely fun to watch other films sometimes. Nothing against horror. We love it. Otherwise we wouldn't be doing this. But
it is like a job.
Other films that include 2016's Best Picture winner, Moonlight, as Celeste had previously said. Let's jump into this, guys. Celeste, this was one that I feel like when we were talking about collaborating and curating a list this year for Celebration of Diversity, this was definitely something that I felt like, because it's June, because it's Pride Month, we had to do something that celebrated the LGBT culture along with Black stories and Black entertainment. And what better way to do that than this masterpiece of a film?
Yes, it's a very complex film, and I think that is one of the first things that draw me to it. When this film first came out, you know, of course, as you mentioned, it talks about LGBTQ, and, you know, it deals with African-American male, a character we hardly ever see in these kind of films, dealing with suppressing that side of him, but also wanting to open it up. But he can't open it up because he's living in an environment that doesn't have compassion. It takes all your weaknesses and exploits them, and it doesn't allow you to be yourself. You have to put up a facade to survive, because if you don't, it's a dog-eat-dog world. And, you know, it's great that it's a coming-of-age tale as well, but also it's a drama that deals with real human beings. Like, it doesn't feel like that these are characters. It doesn't feel like that these are people that you can just draw down to just, okay, this person's good and this person's bad. Like, no, these are just human beings. They're very complex. You know, they have their good and their bad moments. We see that from Chiron. We see that from Juan, the drug dealer, who in most scenes, he's a calming and a mentoring presence for Chiron. But on the other side, he's this drug dealer. But what you would get from society is that they won't look at the mentoring side of this guy. They'll say that, hey, this guy's a drug dealer. You know, he's like he's serving out, you know, like crack and, like, you know, heroin to his own people. Like, how can he do that? But they don't understand that this guy, maybe he didn't want to be a drug dealer. Maybe this is the only way that he could be able to survive and make a home for himself. We don't know about the circumstances and environment that make up each one of us, that make up our journey, that make up who we are. And the 3 stages that this film deals with Chiron, from a boy to a young adult to a full-grown man, you know, all these stages make up who he is. And I mean, it's a fantastic character study, and I just can't wait till we can get into more detail about it, because I love this film, and I think it's honestly one of the best films I've seen in my life, honestly.
So Kat mentioned this originally, kind of like revealing the hands of where the ghouls lied with this. Celeste and I are also in the 10 out of 10 category, so you guys aren't alone. But I came out of this movie, and I honestly felt like this movie teased such potential for a trilogy, that had they decided to like tell Sharon's story over 3 different parts, I would have been completely okay with that, because there's so much intrigue that comes in, and I love the dynamic between him and Juan in the first act of the film, and then by the time that you get to the second act and he is Sharon and he's no longer little, there's that scene between him and Teresa where she describes their dynamic and says, you and Juan were always thick as thieves. And I wanted so much more of that. Like, it hurt me as a viewer to know that I was not going to get to see that dynamic moving forward anymore. But I think that by the time he gets to Black is really where the film takes the most intriguing turns in terms of like really breaking down not only stereotypes for like what we typically see for Black males in these types of roles, but also LGBT representations as well.
Yeah, I would have been thrilled if it was a show, or even if they expand it into a show. I like agree that like the characters, as you're saying, are like super complex, and just like really, there were so many moments where I know when Gabe and I were talking about it was like, when just our hearts were just like, the feels were strong. And you know, I feel like it would do well as a show. I think if they expanded upon the world, I would be super here for it. Also, I love like the mannerisms that were passed up with the ages. Like, it really, like, it felt like it was the same person the whole way through, like with how they, like, the little looks, the really subtle things. Like, they did such a fantastic job.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the avoiding of eye contact and the delivery of lines. Yeah, it kind of reminds me, when you're thinking of how it's split up, it reminds me a bit of Euphoria, and how like each episode we got a glimpse into the backstories of each of those characters and like the motivations of them and what they're experiencing. And I always appreciated that about that show specifically, because it's like the episode or 2 before that, you saw them in a specific light because they were just kind of the background character, and then you get their personal voyage. So I felt like I would have loved to see like more of Kevin, or like more of the other characters too. Like if we had spent longer time with them, but it is already almost like 2 hours as a film. So I think as a film, I enjoyed the amount of time that we spent with each part of his growth in his life. But it was kind of bittersweet to like move on to the next thing, because I was like, I'm not done with Little. Like, I don't feel resolved yet, or like, whoa, you just cut me off in the middle of his like youth real quick, and now he's whoa. I was like, okay.
I mean, that's how adulthood hits. You just are like, your understanding of the world is just different.
Yes, but it is a beautiful film. I would say the thing that caught me right out the gate, and why I was like, okay, this is like, I literally like 2 minutes in, I was like, oh, this is going to be a phenomenal film, was just the long shots. Just a lot of like revolving, like circling shots that we just keep going, and it's never like, there's not a lot of cuts, like, and when they're cuts, they're very deliberate to be like, now you have to look at this, and you're spending time in those moments, and it felt very organic, like having that flow of like, we're just kind of moving around this conversation, there's things happening in the background, and they're just operating. So it's like you just kind of got dropped into the middle of this neighborhood, in the middle of these people's lives, and you're just watching it unfold. And that happens throughout the whole film. There's always these really looming, almost like voyeuristic shots where you're just kind of there, and you're like watching from behind or watching around, and really help to drive up the tension because you're stuck like just living with the characters. I felt it a lot towards the end too, just like in moments where there wasn't dialogue and it was just people like internalizing what they just heard or what they just said, and it's just like a slow pan in, or we're just looking at them as they're like, oh, feeling this, and then you're also feeling it. Beautiful. Can't even.
I'm so glad that you brought up the camera angles specifically, because there is a fluidity to the camera that almost kind of gives this story, like Alyssa had deemed the story being a character study, but there's almost kind of like this like documentarian-esque feel to it, the way that it tells the stories, because the way that you have like the opening sequence, or even the Kevin versus Sharon like high school fights, that all of that stuff just feels so incredibly natural that you feel like you're right there in the crowd watching it. Like during that opening sequence, I felt like I was on the street passing by watching that scene unfold, literally listening to that conversation as I'm driving by. And the director does a really just fantastic job at really establishing angles and setting up shots to make them feel as fantastic as possible. But also the lighting on this movie as well, it's also a very colorful and very intentional film, and I think that the lighting and just the way that certain angles are set up, they do a really phenomenal job at that.
Yeah, definitely, because there's a lot of like darker skinned people in this that you don't see. You never get to see those on film, and never in such a beautiful way. It's one thing that I always appreciated about like Insecure, and I know that this film also got a lot of accolades for just having amazing lighting and color choice, because the camera was invented and made essentially racist. Like, it was made to not pick up darker colors, and the only reason it did that was because the only reason they improved it is because of furniture. Because there was furniture companies that had like dark oak like dressers, and they were like, oh, it's not coming up on this Kodak photo, so now we should change it. Not because of people. So color theory and like the deliberate lighting and choices of really making these different complexions really pop, and the melanin is just popping all over the place. It was like beautiful. I was like, oh my god, when I saw that little boy, I was like, thank you. I like geeked out so hard for like any time lighting is done well like that.
I mean, not only is this a beautiful looking film, but it's a beautiful sounding film as well. I mean, when the scenes that take place at the beach, I mean, you're just hearing the waves just crash into each other, and it feels very peaceful. I mean, we feel like the characters, like when Juan is teaching Chiron how to swim, that was honestly just, I was just getting butterflies in my stomach just how beautiful it was. I mean, for one, seeing this guy taking his time to teach his kid like how to swim, and just feeling the water all around him, and it's just beautiful all around. But the soundtrack is great as well, because it's easy for a film that has a lot of black characters just to put in regular hip-hop music. Like, oh yeah, let's put in this 50 Cent track right here. Hey, let's put in this T.I. track right here. Like, I'm not dissing any of those tracks, but it's often in black films we don't get really unique soundtracks, like soundtracks that can take from every genre and be able to blend them in together. And this film does very well. Not only does it have hip-hop, it has Mozart in this film. It has chopped and screwed hip-hop from the late 90s and the early 2000s. It has a phenomenal sounding score, orchestral score, and it's able to implement these like song items in there in a natural way. Like, it doesn't feel forced. It doesn't feel like they're trying to set a mood. The film just moves at this kind of this gliding pace that feels almost dreamlike, but it's based in reality. And I think there's not many drama films that can get this real. Like, nothing felt phony to me. Like, oftentimes in drama films, we see characters that that, okay, this character is going to have an issue with this character, and then this person's going to break down, they're going to start crying. Like, we can tell when the cues are coming up. But this film, like, it felt like I was actually just watching these people, like you said, Josh, a documentary. It felt like I was watching these people, and I was learning something about how these people are living their lives, and where they're coming from and who they are, and just all of these dimensions. Like, it's a very layered film, and I think that this is a type of experience that gets better with every rewatch. Like, I noticed it had been a long time for me ever since I had seen this film, like I guess maybe a year or so. But coming back to this, I loved it even more. And it's easy to break it down into elements, but something inside of me just felt more connected with this film than I did ever before. And yeah, it's there's no words for it.
If you guys listened to our episode on The Hunt last year, you know that Celeste and I don't always see eye to eye when it comes to films. But before we get into like some of the more serious topics, I want to pick apart something you just said and just ask a question. I don't remember the last time that I heard 50 Cent or T.I. on a soundtrack. Has this been something that has happened within the last 5 years? Did he freeze?
I mean, you'll see it in some films where like they'll go to the throwback machine, just get like in the club, or they'll start playing like You Can Have Whatever You Like or something like that. Like, I mean, it happens a lot in mostly films that are dealing with the early 2000s, or if it's like a TV show that's trying just to get an easy needle drop that a lot of people are going to notice. But it doesn't happen often in film. But I'm just using it as an example for just all kinds of hip hop, you know. I mean, you know what I'm talking about. Like, we had, like, anytime you see a film where there's a sports film with a lot of black people in it, trust me, you're going to get a lot of, like, Yang Yang Twins and 2 Chainz and a lot of just these, like, braggadocious soundtracks. And they're never varied, you know. They never really go outside their comfort zone and try to, like, score these characters in these moments with other types of music. And, you know, I'm not dissing hip-hop, but I like it when films are able to use their soundtrack as a way of enhancing the story.
Yeah, the sounds never were unnecessary. Like, it didn't try to lead you anywhere. It was more on the emotion and the dialogue and just the characters kind of going through those motions, going through those moments with each other. And so when there was music there, it was intentional. So it's not like Suicide Squad, which was trying to be Guardians of the Galaxy, and was like, we'll just put a bunch of old music in here, and people liked it before, and it's like, this is chaos. None of this makes sense. So it's not like that. It's actually good. So I understand what you're saying, Colette. Yes. And I also understand the 50 Cent because old Sharon kind of looks like 50 Cent. He looked like a younger or like a cousin of 50 Cent. Especially if he took out the girl, but maybe it's because the girl was there and I was like, what? I was like, wait a second. Yeah. What a good film. I can't even.
Well, I mean, I eventually want to get to how Black, as the film refers to him, and IMBD as well, kind of takes the Sharon character into new areas kind of after the whole fight incident happens and he gets relocated to Atlanta. But this film actually opens up with Sharon being bullied. Like, our very first instance of him is being chased and basically having stuff thrown at him. And I don't know about you guys, like growing up and like what your stories were, but I had some bullying that happened to me when I was a little bit older than Sharon, and that definitely like brought back a lot of emotional scars for me watching this one, and particularly because like it happened where like it's at that awkward age where like no one kind of really understands their body yet with puberty and everything happening, and so you're still kind of like figuring out like do I like the same sex? Do I like the opposite sex? And do I not, you know, am I asexual and stuff like that? And so and we kind of see that it's alluded to like the boys kind of are picking on him because they suspect that he might actually be gay.
Yeah, well, his mother is the one who says it. She like hints at it that the why do you think he's being bullied? And actually what I was thinking of, because I'm watching it now and not in 2016, I actually immediately thought of Lil Nas X's newest video where he talks about his experience through high school and kind of like not feeling like he fitted. And that's immediately where my brain was, and I was like, you know, feeling that. And that's why I really valued like him finding someone to talk to. And that that one conversation where he asks what the F word means, not the other F word that I will not say, what it means, and just seeing him like struggle with the way to explain that in falling on it's a word used to hurt people who are gay, like not like that's what you are. And for him to ask like, am I that? And he says, no, you could be gay, but you're not that, and don't let anyone ever call you that. And that was such like so important for someone growing up to hear and to know like, okay, it's not wrong for you, and to hear it in such a positive way, and from like someone that he clearly is looking up to, and the only person that he would probably value input from, even though he's like internalizing what's happening with the bullying and also what's happening with his mother, because even though she's not outright saying it, she's clearly has some feelings and complications of her own that she's dealing with, that she's putting onto him. And I like that's the first conversation where I was like, oh, we're like, that's what hit me first, was that conversation. And I was just like, that was a very beautiful moment to see.
Yeah, I mean, you have to think about it. When you're a young kid and you're experiencing new things about the world, it's so easy to believe in things that feel ridiculous when you get older. You know, like for me, when I was young, I used to believe that do you remember the Fruit Gusher commercials? Like I used to see when the kids would eat the Fruit Gushers and then their head would pop up and explode. I remember I would go crying to my mom, thinking that, hey, Mom, don't give me any Fruit Gushers because I think my head's going to explode. Like I literally would tell her that. And so when you're a kid and you are experiencing something as serious as what Chiron is dealing with, when it comes to dealing with these feelings he has for the same sex and dealing with how people are labeling him and picking on him, ridiculing him for it, it has to be very tough because, I mean, he's not even in high school yet, and he understands that he is different from everybody else. And that can be scary because usually you want to feel a part of a group. You want to feel a part of a connection. I know a lot of people like to, you know, puff their chest out and say, oh, no, I like to be different. But trust me, there's something inside of us, whether we've been growing up or whether we have to get rid of it. There's a sense that we want to feel connected to other people. And usually that connection is by having the same interests. And, you know, for a young black kid, you know, who's growing up in the South, he's growing up in Miami, and, you know, he understands that, you know, if people know about this, and people are ridiculing him and willing to like chase him and try to beat him up for this, then what does that say about him? Does that mean that he's like not worthy of love? Does that mean that he's a bad person? And that's all that's going through his head. And that's not being said in this conversation between Chiron because it's subtext. It's underneath the surface. It's a read between the lines kind of way. You know, in a bad movie, they would have just like kind of laid it out on the line and the kind of on the nose, like, well, hey, it's okay. Don't worry about what those kids say. Like, you know, words, they won't break you. They're not sticks and stones, like something like that. But this film says a lot with little. It really is purposeful in the way that he uses dialogue, in the way that these characters look at each other, as in the way that these close-ups are framed. Like you can feel the urgency, you can feel the seriousness of this topic, you know, which is dealing with someone who is realizing that, hey, I'm gay, and I'm seeing how people look at it as like it's a bad thing, and I see like, you know, how my mom even deals with it. Like Chiron doesn't see it himself, but we see that the mom, like Gabe said, she's going through problems of her own, how she's taking it out on this kid, you know, because of the way he is, instead of understanding him. And I think that's what makes it beautiful, that Juan and Paula, you know, his girlfriend. Is Paula the mom's name, or Juan's girlfriend?
Teresa. Janelle Monáe.
Okay, so Juan and Teresa, when they're having that conversation, it's a great moment because, you know, it's hard enough dealing with yourself. It's hard enough to tell it to someone else, especially with the people you love, because you don't want to disappoint them, and you don't want them to look at you any different.
If you or someone you know is listening to this podcast right now and you're struggling with suicide, addiction, self-harm, or depression, we encourage you guys to please reach out. This is the heartbeat of why we do what we do. Suicide is currently the 10th leading cause of death in the United States, and as of this recording, there are 132 suicides that take place each and every day on American soil. And when you scale back internationally, there are 800,000 successful suicides. That is one death roughly every 40 seconds. So if you or someone you know is struggling, you guys can go to victimsandvillains.net/hope. That resource is going to be right in the description wherever you guys are currently listening or streaming this. There you'll find resources that include the National Suicide Lifeline, which is 1-800-273-8255. You can also text HELP to 741-741. We also have a plethora of other resources, including churches, getting connected with counselors, LGBT resources like the Trevor-Project, and also veteran hotline as well. Please, if you hear nothing else in the show, understand that you listening to this right now, have value and worth. We get it. Suicide, depression, mental health, these are hard topics, and the stigma around them doesn't make it any easier. But please consider the resources right in the descriptions below wherever you guys are listening, because once again, you have value and you have worth. So please stay with us. I feel like I really resonated with a lot of Sharon's character arc as a kid, especially kind of once you get him back into Paula's custody, and the very first thing that, you know, she does once he's home is he wants to go for the TV, and he wants to go for that escape because he doesn't want to be around the neighborhood bully, the kids, because they're bullying him. And there's this sense of identity, right, where here you have a kid that has a mom that doesn't really want him around, but she does when it benefits him. There's no father around. Juan at one point asks, you know, where's your dad? And he just kind of gets like even more quiet. He's bullied and doesn't understand his, you know, his own identity or, you know, anything along those lines. And one of the scenes that I think in particular that really resonated with me is the scene where they're all playing football, and Sharon just kind of feels like he's there just to be there, and he just kind of is like walking alongside, you know, wherever the ball's going, and you see really what really resonates with him are the entertainment. There's the scene where he comes home from school and he just sees the place where the television used to be, and then the camera just kind of pans back to him and goes to the next scene. Like there's a sense of heartbreak that's here with him, is that like his only escape from this life has now just left him, and he kind of has to face the reality that is now at his feet.
Yeah, there's also this like element that's like, what is home? Like you see a lot throughout it, where it's like when he gets into high school, not to like jump ahead too much, but like she's like, find somewhere to be. And there's moments throughout where like he didn't want to go home when he was a kid and he ran away. Like he essentially doesn't feel like his home is home, and that like I feel like that is like very evident that he doesn't feel like there's somewhere he can feel seen, or like I guess it all ties back to like why representation is really important. And that like he doesn't feel at home. He doesn't feel like he has someone who he can like look up to in terms of like what he is experiencing and what he's trying to figure out. And yeah, that really hit for me.
Yeah. The dialogue is great in that, and because there's also conversations with the mom where in that when he is like younger, not like the youngest, his middle
teenage
Sharon, she has that conversation where she's like, Teresa's not your own. That's not your people. I'm your people. And I've heard that conversation, right, where this is your home. You wish you were somewhere else, but this is and there's an insecurity too with the mom, and feeling like she knows that she's not the best mom, and later we see that too, and feeling guilty for that, so then she's projecting that, and then she's also in this lowest point. But every single piece of dialogue in this is so intentional because it's not unnecessary. There's no background noise, and especially because his several named character, and I want to keep calling him Chiron, because that's the centaur in Greek mythology who was the doctor. I was why do they keep doing this? Just like Lovecraft Country when they call their Hippolyta Hippolyta. I was why are we changing up Greek mythology? But when it's the fact that he doesn't talk excessively, right? He only says things that he's mulled over, that he's feeling or feels necessary, even up until adulthood, which was honestly the adult part was my favorite part, to be real. But I'll wait until we go through the traumatizing middle and then we get to the adult part.
Well, I guess before we kind of head into the high school portion of it, there is let's talk about the relationship between Sharon and Juan, because for one, I think one of the things that this is the scene that you had talked about in particular, where he has he's taken him out to learn how to swim and kind of learn how to trust, and you kind of see that there's this lack of trust that exists there, because every person, it doesn't seem like he's ever learned how to trust someone, for one. And when you've gone through bullying and kind of being with a verbally abusive mother or a drug addict, not having also a father around, it's hard to trust, especially when you're a victim of being bullied as well. And he says at some point you got to decide if you got to decide for yourself who you're going to be, and you're going to be, I can't read my own handwriting, crap. At some point you gotta decide for yourself who you want to be, and it's this monologue that he gives that really sums up the relationship of them perfectly, saying that it demonstrates this relationship, the importance of a father figure or a mentor in your life, and just the impact that it has on your life as a human being and your mental health. And we even kind of see how that relationship impacts him into adulthood, to where he has a car that's almost the exact same model and even has the crown on it, just like Juan's car. And so you see how this relationship really impacted him moving into adulthood.
Yeah, I mean, there's a quote that goes that, family isn't just the people you're just blood related to. I mean, family is anybody who comes into your life and impacts it in a profound way that stays with you for the rest of your days. And we can see that Chiron, even though he is forced into a situation to where he has to sell drugs in order to, kind of make any money, and that is dwelled in more to what happens during the high school phase. But we can see that this guy has carried a lot of what Juan has said with him in his day-to-day life. I mean, in one of the scenes where he's a kid, he tells him, hey, you can't come into this house and sit with your back to the door. Come over here and sit right here. Therefore, you can see the whole room. And even little things like that, it's a person that really cares about you, a person that really wants you to succeed. They want you to almost have a better life than they do. I can see that Juan, he didn't want Chiron to go down the same path he had. I mean, we don't really know why Juan is doing the things he does. We don't really know why he has the need to sell drugs, but I can definitely tell that Juan was probably a young Chiron himself. I mean, he tells Chiron, when Chiron says that he doesn't like his mother, I think he says he hates his mother. Juan's like, I hated my mother too, but she was the only one I had, and I still love her, And that's it. That's enough to tell us that Juan was once Chiron, and he sees that how his life has turned out, and he wants Chiron to do better because he can tell that he's an intelligent kid. He just needs somebody that's going to look after him. At home, he doesn't have that. And I like that the film doesn't really villainize Paula. It shows that, like, hey, sometimes the people that we're supposed to depend on, sometimes they fail us, and sometimes it may not even be their fault. I mean, Paula, yes, she chose to use drugs, but she also had an addiction. She had a disease. She was dependent on it. I mean, we can see the scene where he comes back home after hanging out with Juan. She's in there with another man. Like, maybe this is the way that she gets away from her issues. Because I think I could tell that she was kind of overworked. We see the scene in the beginning. Juan takes Chiron, takes him to eat, takes her back to the house, and then Paula's coming like, hey, where you been at? Like, I told you to be here when you need to be here. But how do you expect this kid to, like, really just live by himself, like, for this whole time and not expect him to get into anything? Because Juan was saying, hey, your kid was in one of these dope holes right here. Who knows what could have happened to him if those kids would have caught up to him, or if maybe somebody who was a dope addict came into there and he was still in there. And it's just that Paula, she's one of those people that you feel sorry for, because you can tell that, she did have a job. She was trying to work, but it's just that the environment that she was in, and maybe she wasn't making enough money, and also there wasn't a man there. This is another kid who has to grow up without really knowing his father, and it's a terrible thing, when two people are able to come together to make a kid, but then the mother or the father just isn't man or woman enough to stick around and protect that life. I mean, when you have a kid, that kid is everything. It takes precedent over everything, whether you like it or not. That's your seed. That's something that you created. That's something that you want to live a plentiful life on this earth. That's something that should be a part of you, something that you love more than anything. And it's hard to see stories where kids are kind of just left neglected by their parents and everything. And we can see by the end of the film that Paula, she feels regret for it. But there's also a power in that she's willing to get herself cleaned, and that now she's off the drugs, and now she's wanting to do better. But she knows that, some time is something that you can't get back. And so the time that she lost with Chiron as a child kind of still affected him, growing up as a man. Even though he had somebody like Juan in his life, he still was missing that mother.
Yeah, I really resonated with obviously, I didn't have the exact upbringing as Sharon, but I did experience a similar, when you kind of take on the raising of yourself. And when I remember when Juan ended up taking him home, and she's like, he takes care of himself, he's good like that. And that was like, I think a lot of the kids who are easy in terms of, like, they do take care of themselves, they do make sure that they get home most of the time. Like, they don't really always get the urgency that be loud and angry would get. And I really resonated with that. Like, that really hit home for me, because that's similar to something that I experienced growing up, when you're like the easy kid in terms of you do what you're supposed to do otherwise.
Yeah, so the parent kind of takes for granted that they should be a parent, and instead kind of just, they're like, oh, well, you're doing it, so I'm doing a good job. I'm doing fine. I don't need to actually do the parent thing because you're doing it for me. I also think there's like a natural give and take with Juan and Little, because he clearly wants Little to see him as better than what he is, and to fill a void that he has as well. Like that same conversation where he talks about how he might be gay, he also, blatantly asks, like, is my mother on drugs, and do you sell them? And there's that breakdown. And for me, I felt that was a really strong scene, because oftentimes when we have, like you're saying, like, you have black characters, and if they're a drug dealer, that's a very specific character, and they do not have depth. They do not have like a whole personality and their own struggles and trauma. Like, it's just, that's bad. Don't be that person. Instead of understanding the complexities and understanding that it's actually like societal and that it's systemic, that is, bringing someone to this thing, and to see, ultimately what happens with Little and how he gets to that point is like sometimes it's just how it happens, and did kind of remind me of First Purge, because that character was also a drug dealer, but he also was like a part of the youth program and helping people in his neighborhood. Like, it was this like
ran the community center.
Exactly. Like, we are like dichotomous, right? Like, there are more to us than just like this thing that we're stuck doing. And you could tell that it really tore him apart. And so I really just loved how each character was defined and had like a full range of emotions and ways that they got here. No one was really villainized. It was like, people are going to do what they have to do. People are going to be affected the way they're going to be affected. And we're all just trying to get to the end of it. Even to see, you know, what was happening with Kevin, and ultimately what happens in, it's high school, right? High school, with that fight, which broke my heart. That was another conversation right before that, when he says, what do you have to be sorry for? I was like, I can't. I was like, I cannot with this film. My emotions. I was like, I read BL every day. Okay, like, I'm very in tune with gay relationships and the emotions that come with them, and it still got me. I still was like, I can't. That was just a few words. It was the most beautiful thing in this whole film. I was done. Turn me over. I'm done.
To go back to the scene in particular that you were just talking about with Chiron and Juan, the scene where, you know, he's trying to kind of like ask him about it, and he asks the question, you know, how will I know? And to which Teresa says, you know, you'll know when you know. And it's always kind of interesting to me, because I feel like society pushes constantly this, like, you have to know where you stand sexually at such a young age. I think if you look at the statistics, it's like as young as like 7 or 8 is when children are first like exposed to pornography, and it's by like 10 or 11, like that's when like addictions can start to be had. And Celeste, you brought up the Fruit Gushers commercial in the 90s. It seems like we've reached this like point as like a society where you're just like, innocence can no longer just be innocence, but it's at a point to where you have to say like it has to be sexualized, and like you have to know where you stand. And I love the journey of I wish I could remember the last name of it, but the movie Love, Simon is a great film that got underappreciated, but it's like the main character's entire journey is kind of like his like own like sexual awakening and like identity of like what it means to truly come out and come to terms with being a gay man in today's society. And it's something that he's been able to kind of keep quiet, but here you have a lot of these peer pressure things from that Chiron's going through, and a lot of bullying. And I love that Teresa throws in there, you don't need to know right now, because you don't need to get caught up in it. Like, let kids be kids, bottom line. I mean, the things that we do today are going to have an effect on our tomorrow. So plaguing kids about sexual identity at such a young age before they're ready is going to have a really tarnished view of it tomorrow on their mental health and subsequently sexual identity.
Yeah, I mean, they push heterosexuality on kids like it's a cult. Like, it's like, you have to be straight. That's your little girlfriend, right? Like, that's your... And it's like the concept that, like, I guess I see a lot on TikTok, honestly, where it's like people who are like, you can't teach kids about gayness or other things because that'll turn them gay. It's like, no, then they'll know that they are. You know what I mean? Like, it's representation.
That's an option.
Yeah. Speaking from my own experience, I had no idea what I was till I was a whole adult. No clue, because I had never heard of anything that was not, like, in terms of, like, as I identify as pan. I didn't know that it was a thing that existed. And I think, like, a lot of times that we see, like, kids, it's like they really are just, like, being forced into this cult of heterosexuality and that like you have to be straight. That's like the whole thing. Push the nuclear family. And like it's one, super rude and hella stressful, but you get like this trauma, this othering that's just like naturally comes up when you're pushing one thing and not explaining the full picture. I guess like it creates this feeling that like, oh, so being queer in any way is wrong. You have to be one thing. And it's also like, I guess the idea that like you're either hella gay or you're super straight. Like there's no middle space is also something that they push super heavy. And I hope they stop doing that for future kids.
I appreciate hella gay.
Yeah. But I just didn't know there was like a middle space is all I'm saying. Because it was a whole growing up time. They're like, you're either one or the other.
And that's still a struggle too, is the middle space getting, being seen as a real thing, like you know, that it is applicable and that people are, complex, and so is sexuality. It is a spectrum as well, and so I think that's still a struggle too, for people to see that like bi and pan are valid sexualities.
Yeah, but yeah, representation matters. Do more.
Yes, and you also have to remember, like, in the late 60s, in the psychiatric mental disorders book, they still had homosexuality as a disorder, as a disease, that you could go and just be electroshocked and it would cure it. And they're trying to push the same thing now. I've seen some disturbing, like, TikToks where they're talking about giving homosexuals therapy and stuff so they can change and they can be the right way. But what exactly is the right way? I mean, there's been a lot of fear mongering about the LGBTQ community and homosexuality for as far back as I can remember. Like when I grew up in Georgia, so I grew up in the deep South, and I hate to put a stain on it, because that's where I'm from. But down in the deep South, I recognized how ostracized and how demeaning people who were gay were treated. Yeah, and just seeing kids and what they would say to other kids. Like I grew up around it. Elementary school, if there was a kid and somebody had a suspicion or they found out, or you could even be lied on and said that you were gay because of something you did. Like it was just a word that people threw around.
Just derogatory,
Yeah, like if you did something stupid on a video game, people be like, oh, like, that's gay. And, at the time I didn't realize how bad that was. I didn't realize how demoralizing and just how insulting it was for homosexual people, because there wasn't a lot during that time on TV screen that was very positive portrayals of homosexual people. You were either going to get the homosexual person who was a serial killer or a villain, or you're going to get the homosexual person that was very outlandish and just bombastic and just energetic and all about trying to hit on every man or every woman that they see. But when you get to know people who really are, a part of the LGBTQ community, you realize that they're just like us. The only thing is that they prefer to be with the same sex. And who says that that's wrong? Like, okay, if you believe in Christianity and you believe in the Bible, it's easy to interpret the Bible to what you want to these days. But doesn't the Bible also say love each other like thy neighbor? Like, treat others how you want to be treated. But we still have people who claim themselves as Christians who treat homosexuality like it's something that's going to either kill you or just destroy you or something that's un-American. Even though there's been many strides and there's been a lot of progress when it comes to the way that laws and certain establishments are treating the LGBT community, there still is a stigma that people out there have to deal with. There still is, the name calling, the jokes, the little petty jokes that you still hear from stand-up comedians and people around you, even your family members. There's still those negative depictions that are in media, that are in film, that are in TV shows, that are in music videos, but also we're starting to get a good balance of positive portrayals. And I think that there's nothing wrong for a kid to not know what they are. I mean, think about it. They always say when you're young that, hey, when you're at this age, you'll finally figure it out. You'll finally learn what it is to be an adult. Well, I'm 29 right now, and I'm still trying to figure out how to be an adult. I think we all are still trying to figure out how to have like that where everything feels complete, that life that feels complete. I mean, it's an ongoing process. It's a learning process. And I feel that humans were not meant to just be on one path. I don't feel that it was meant for just everybody to be like, okay, a man and a woman, or a woman with a man. I don't think it was. I think that if it was not meant to be, then it wouldn't be in our society, but it is. And it's natural, and it's been going on since like the ancient days. So when people like to say that homosexuality is a scourge and that it should be outlawed, it's like, well, have you read your history? Have you done your research? Have you actually gone up to a person and talk to them and get to know them instead of just putting them onto a label? And there could be people that you know that are secretly gay and they are afraid to come out to somebody because they're around these stigmas and these stereotypes and this harsh verbal treatment.
How would you guys like to help us get mental health resources into schools, conventions, and other events? Well, now you can. Simply go to patreon.com/victims and villains for as little as $1 a month. You guys can help us get mental health resources into current and upcoming generations, educate and break down stigma surrounding mental health, suicide, and depression. And you get exclusive content that you can't get anywhere else. And you guys can tell us which Nicolas Cage movie you want us to cover, and we'll do it. All it takes to get started is to go to patreon.com/victims and villains, or simply click the link in the episode description wherever you guys are currently listening or streaming this episode. Pick your tier and get started today. Yes, it's that simple. So quickly select the tier that you want and help us get hope into the hands of the depressed and the suicidal today.
Why do people like scary stories? For me, it's always been about resilience. Horror stories are brave new worlds where anything is possible and anyone can triumph. I'm Wimoto, by the way, host of Black Women Are Scary, the podcast that celebrates people of color writing in horror. Our episodes air the first Friday of every month, and we keep up the monster fighting with an online gathering we like to call the Macabre Mixer, where we showcase new authors and new scary stories. So come face the monsters with us.
Yeah, there's a good meme that's like, for anyone who's like, I don't know any gay people, it's like, no, you just don't present yourself as a safe option for someone to come out to you. So you know probably lots of gay people or LGBTQIA plus people, but they do not feel safe around you. So that's why you don't know any, in quotations.
Yeah.
Yeah, when so Celeste, to your point, I've shared this in the past before, especially when we did Black Lives Matter last year. I felt like I had to unlearn so much of my own stuff. Like I grew up around so much homophobia that it just kind of was ingrained as normal. And then I started having like friends and like friends of my sister that would like come home and like just getting to know people, and a lot of people in the LGBT community like would get turned off when they'd hear like I'm a Christian. So like I had to like really like work, like felt like extra hard to kind of get to know them and like be intentional and be like, I'm not here to judge you, condemn you, or like tell you anything that you would hear from beyond the pulpit. I just want to get to know you as an individual. And from that regard, like I've had a lot more of the LGBT community open up to me than I would have had then, you know, I followed in tradition of what I was taught. And I've made a lot of awesome friends and creators in the community, in the DIY scene that are LGBT friendly, you know, positive people. And I freaking love it. Like some of the best art that I think I've seen in the last few years have come from the LGBT scene. I've learned a great deal, and I'm continuously gracious to continue to grow in those areas.
Yeah, it's definitely a lot of unlearning, especially for yourself, in that, like, I grew up in a really Christian household, and there was a lot of things that I had to unlearn, and a lot of things that were unsafe for me growing up, in exploring who I was, and I was always adamant about being accepting, but it was always like this distance thing where it's like, yeah, anyone can love who they want to love, but it was never like, I'm also feeling this, like that was in the secret. Like that was like not what we're saying. And I also think of again, just bring up Lil Nas X, who has a lovely mural in South Philly, in his line where he says that it's a sign of the times every time that I speak, because like that hit me, because I was like, oh my god, that is like me growing up. That was like anytime I spoke out about like equality or just like loving your fellow man, that like I would be immediately hit with, you know, certain scriptures that are, you know, misinterpreted for one. And it wasn't until you know, like I've always labeled myself as bi for a long time, just like quietly, and then in adulthood, really like looking into and discovering pansexuality and being like, oh my god, this makes so much sense. And I actually came out to my best friend from growing up, and he immediately was like, yeah, like we just never had a word for it, but that is 100% what you like. He was like, I don't even know what you're telling me, like, duh, which was essentially the same response I had when he came out to me. I was like, yeah, what about it? But I think the fact that that film came out in 2016, and the fact that we have, you know, black men, and and because, I mean, just because Jarrell Jerome is Afro-Latinx, I'm going to say also like black men and Afro-Latinx men as these bisexual and gay characters and protagonists, and to see their journey, like that is phenomenal. Because I think of even how people were reacting to Sniping Vipers, the Black Mirror episode with Anthony Mackie, right? In the video game, and they're like, and he has that connection with his friend, which it could have been better, but the vitriol from people, because there is a lot of there's like harsh unacceptance towards specifically black men in the LGBTQIA community because of that just a part of that. Like you can see it when he's growing up, in that he is like this outsider, and it's odd for him to have those people who are like, no, nothing is wrong with you, and to have that be 2016 when we have like all of the fire and brimstone coming from Lil Nas X's video, and people like, you know, condemning him for that, and him just living his truth. What a sweet boy. I love him so much. But like it was really exciting for me to see, because it is like we come a long way, and we do have a lot more representation of the LGBTQIA community, and there's Pose, which has trans characters, or even thinking about Orange is the New Black has trans characters, and you have more accepting of queer relationships, but you still, the diversity is lacking when it comes to black males. So to see that, and to see Sharon or Black or Little, whatever he wants to be called today, be this like strong, like just super fine. I was like, I know I'm barking up the wrong tree, but I'm still like I do every day. I read those BL mangas. I get it. But to have him be like this like man's man, and to still be so sensitive and still have that, I was like, this is beautiful. Like, please, like I hope someone is watching this, and if they are in their own way little, and they see that and they're like, oh, like I could be that too. I just like, that's my hope and dream.
Yeah, his final form as Black is, Kevin even says it when they're in the kitchen at that one point. He's like, just kind of looking at him. He's like, it's funny. I guess I imagined something different. And I feel like when you look at how he progresses from this kind of like scrawny kid throughout the first two stages of his life, and then, you know, so much of that final act emphasizes like how like terrifying he is. Like when you have this scene where he's counting the money and he's like just messing with the guy, and he's like, you shorted me, and the guy's like, you know, kind of like freaking out and like scared. He's like, oh no man, just messing with you. Like, but he can just kind of be like so imposing in that final form, and I think that really breaks down a lot of the stereotypes that we see portrayed in film when it comes to both black men and the LGBT community, where it's not this, you know, overtly flamboyant theatrical display of homosexuality. It's like Colette says, it's a real human being having real vulnerable emotions. And the thing that I've found so compelling particularly about his character, because much like Gabe, the final black was my favorite part of the movie as well, was just some of the scenes between him and Kevin, the way that he didn't have to say anything and he was so intimidating but yet so vulnerable without saying anything. And I think that they just conveyed that so well.
I think what is the best part about, you know, Chiron is all of these actors, they almost act the same way. And I'm not saying that in a derogatory manner. I'm saying that they all feel like the same person. Like Little feels just exactly like Chiron does in high school. And then Chiron in high school feels exactly like Chiron is when he's a full grown up man. Like, it's the same guy. Like Kevin says, he's like, hey man, how you doing? Chiron is only known for saying really a few words. He's like, you know what, you haven't changed one bit, only 2 or 3 words at a time, right? Like, these guys all feel the same. Like, there's that sense of vulnerability in this character, and often we don't see male characters with a lot of vulnerability. I mean, think of all the action movies that we see. I mean, the only action here we can really think about having any vulnerability was kind of like John McClane in Die Hard, and maybe in some MCU films, but oftentimes men are meant to be like, I won't say alpha male, because alpha male, that's already a mythology right there that's kind of twisted already, but I would say they're supposed to be these guys who are just not afraid of anything. They're cold-hearted. They don't care about women more than just being a sexual object. They don't show feelings. They don't cry. Like during the high school sequence where Kevin and Chiron are talking on the beach, Kevin talks about how sometimes him being out on the beach and, just like thinking about all the problems of the world makes him want to cry. And then Chiron asks, do you cry? And Kevin's like, nah, but it makes me feel that way. He's still kind of being defensive, but Chiron's like, man, like I cry so much that sometimes it feels like I'm just going to be like, I feel like I'm a tear myself. And then Kevin's like, yeah, like you just want to flow right into the water. Like, it's beautiful. That's just beautiful right there. Like saying so much, but in just less words. And, there needs to be a safe space for men to be able, like, no matter what they look out physically, but to be able to have that safe space to where they can show themselves and show their emotions and show that, yeah, sometimes I'm not like courageous. Sometimes I'm not feeling the best. Sometimes I'm not at 100%. Sometimes things are worrying me. Sometimes I want to crawl into a ball because of the way that the world is. And it's okay to feel that way. We're not all perfect. And there's going to be good days and there's going to be bad days. I mean, there's not a constant state of happiness and there's not a constant state of sadness. Life ebbs and flows. And, it should be all right for not just a woman, but also for men to be able to show those feelings. I mean, we even see from other women how sometimes they will put men into this box, how they are like, oh, I'm the only one that's supposed to be crying, not you, or like, hey, you need to be strong. You need to be strong for both you and me. And yes, I can understand that, but there are times where I want to be able to show a softer side of me. I want to be able to have somebody cuddle me. There should be nothing wrong with that. And I love that this film, outside of showing Chiron as just a real person with dimensions, they also show this guy as, he has to put on this facade on the outside, but in the inside, he's really just a good-natured dude, but he's had to live the life that he's living all because of just certain circumstances and the environment he grew up in. And, the missing figures in his life. And, remember, because Juan, he ends up he ends up losing him while he's at a young age. We don't exactly see it, but Juan essentially dies before we get to the high school section. It's never explained. It's just kind of, that's just how it is. Like, death just sometimes just comes and just takes away somebody, but life still goes on. So who knows how Chiron could have been if Juan was there to help him before he got sent to a juvie detention facility. There's a lot of things that impact the way that a person's life goes, but before you judge that person and just label them and just just put them in a box, get to know that person, and then maybe you can understand why they are the way they are and why their life is the way it is.
I want to jump into something that you just talked about, specifically from the men's point of view. Just kind of throwing this out there, and a lot of people, I think, have this ideal that teenagers, for some reason, are the only people that can commit suicide. But the just looking off of the Foundation for Suicide Prevention's website, just reading some of the statistics here, the rate of suicide is highest in middle-aged white men. In 2019, men died by suicide 3.63 times more often than women. White males accounted for 69.38% of suicides in 2019. That's more than half. And in 2019, there was 47,511, and a lot of the reason I feel like we experience such high suicide rates in men is because we have these societal expectations for how they should be, and also to flip it back to the LGBT side. What really kind of shook my world when we started doing victims was learning to shake off homophobia, was learning how high the rate of suicide is in the community. I think it's like 50% is kind of like the going rate for suicides in the LGBT community, is just because of they are up against this. And I mean, you guys from the Ghouls can definitely speak to this a lot better than I can, but, there's definitely feelings of just, not feeling accepted or not feeling loved after kind of coming to terms and kind of being open with who you really are and stuff like that, causes a spike in wanting to just, be depressed, or spike in being depressed, and then subsequently wanting to take your own life.
Yeah, I mean, the patriarchy and toxic masculinity affects all of us. It's not just ladies that are femme-presenting people who are harmed by that, like those ideas. It's also men who aren't allowed to cry, like you were saying, Klis. In this film, that was another thing that really struck me, is that they let him cry, that you do get to see that. You get to see vulnerability and just emotion, just them kind of going through the fact that he cries a few times, and even as a grown man, and like that's on screen and it's seen positively, like it's just natural, it's normal, was one of the like biggest pulls for me in this film, was allowing that to happen, because you just don't see that in media. You don't see that explored in such a way. Like there's so much that this film covers that we're not getting anywhere else, or hadn't gotten anywhere else, and to tick off so many boxes and do it so well, like that's why it's like 10 out of 10. Like that's why when I was done, I was like, this is it. Like the final chapter, with just the very slow pace conversation of Black and oh my god, I'm totally blanking on his name.
Kevin.
What's it?
Kevin,
thank you. I was like, normal names. Kevin, he, like that whole conversation, like the toying back and forth, the reconnecting, playing the song. Oh my god. Every single piece, like every time the moments were broken up by regular things happening, like patrons coming in or paying their tab, or them moving on, and to see his license plate say Black 3005, I was like, get out of here, because I was like, he never forgot. He's playing this up like, oh, you're just calling me, what is it? Like, he never forgot. This has always been a part of him, and so eloquently written, because it's like you were saying, Celeste, it's not said outright. Like, no, it's not like, I have been pining over for you for my whole life, and he doesn't say that. But every single time, like, it was like this push and pull between the two of them, and even like little like digs in the, like, from Kevin, like when he's just like, well, where were you gonna sleep? Like, I was like, you have me dying. Like, I was like, he's being so sly right now. And just really loving those parts, like the ease. And I feel like I have not seen a film that has done it so fluidly and naturally as this one. And like I said, yeah, 10 out of 10. It's been a long time since I felt so fulfilled and seen, and also got to see a demographic, like a whole hodgepodge of demographics. Like he has a lot of things, and he has to juggle a lot of identities and biases because of those identities, and he does it really well, like in the portrayal. So being able to see that experience was very beneficial, and something I really appreciated.
I wanted to ask a question about the last image of the movie. What do y'all think that signifies, where we see little Chiron, just his back is turned to the camera, he's staring at the ocean, he looks back? What do y'all think that means? I've been trying to find an answer for the last like 5 years watching the film, and I've never really have come to a consensus on what it's supposed to signify. But it's a beautiful moment, but I think almost it's just like a feeling. But what do y'all think?
Well, he's blue. He's blue, which is what Juan was, and it's the moonlight, the moonlight, right? He had that whole conversation of when he was younger, and he would be in the moon, like he was out, and the Latina woman was like, "You're blue, and that's what I'm gonna call you." And he was like, "That's your name." And then for his evolution, for his name to be Black, right, was there. But that's what I saw. To me, it was like him. He was blue. He was the moonlight boy.
Good answer. Great answer, actually.
That's what I was like, ooh. Only when I saw, I got again colors. That's me.
I mean, I got something that I'll throw out here too. It's just because the very last image before you see little Chiron is you see that vulnerability kind of come to a head, where Kevin is holding Black and just like letting him rest, and he just looks at peace. And so for me, I kind of looked, to me it felt like almost like he was kind of getting ready to have a baptism, because he had kind of like come to like this journey that he had been searching for his entire life. Like the one thing that he had always wanted, he was getting ready to become almost a new creation, and kind of have that peace and that acceptance with Kevin. So that's how I took that ending.
Yeah, I'll agree. I think it was like a nod back to who he lost along the way, which was himself.
I mean, powerful way to end the film. I mean, it really does nail the ending. But I mean, hey, I would have been cool with it ending with Kevin and Chiron, holding each other. I mean, that's also another beautiful moment, because if you notice, I mean, they're in the same position that Kevin and Chiron were during the high school sequence when they're on the beach together. It's a nice life comes full circle moment.
Well, another chapter into the Celebration of Diversity series has come and gone. Thank you guys so much for listening. And if you guys now that you guys are done with this podcast, you guys should go check out another great podcast called The Ghouls Next Door. Where can people find it?
Yes, you can find us at ghouls-next-door.com, anywhere that you get your podcasts, or The Ghouls Next Door. We're also on YouTube, The Ghouls Next Door. We also, if you are interested in talking or listening to discussions about queer representation in horror, we have several episodes. We did a whole series on that, as well as our For the Culture and Horror While Black series, in which we're talking about different representation of folks in horror and whether or not it's good. So definitely check those out. And you can follow us on social media. Just look up Ghouls Next Door. You'll see us. We're there.
We're also on TikTok and Twitch as of recently.
Yes. New.
Same name though.
Tight ball. I'll have to add you guys on TikTok because Victims and Villains is also now on TikTok and Twitch. So you guys can go check us out over there. But where can people find more information from Coalesce and Feel and Film?
You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and letterboxd.com. On Facebook, my real name is Coalesce Davis, Caless. Feeling Film, we're also on Twitter, and check out our past episodes. We've been doing a lot of weekly FF Plus. We kind of died down a little bit because the new releases have kind of died down, but we've been doing a weekly roundup of new releases each week. 2 films or 3 films a week. Sometimes we'll go over new releases. Sometimes we'll go over streaming picks from films we've seen over the week. So come check us out there, and also check out me and Josh's past episodes with not only Ghouls Next Door, but me and Captain Nostalgia ourselves on Victims and Villains.
We got surprisingly deep on Half Baked, so go check out that episode.
Yes.
You guys can follow me on Letterboxd as well, and Instagram. I'm at Captain Nostalgia for both of them. You guys can go to victimsandvillains.net, where you guys can find links to all of our socials, including Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and Twitch. Also, guys, can wherever you guys get your podcasts from, make sure that you guys subscribe and leave us a 5-star written review so we can help more people discover hope and mental health awareness. And most importantly, you guys can also find past episodes, movie reviews, and above all else, our mental health resource library, all of which you guys can find in the show notes wherever you guys are listening or streaming this episode. Thank you guys for celebrating Moonlight with us. We're going to be back talking about the photograph on the next episode. So have a good one, ghouls and gals. This episode of Victims and Villains is written by Josh Berkey and Coalesce Davis. It is produced by Josh Berkey. Music by Mallory, Jameson, and Purple Planet, both of which you guys can find links for in the show notes below. Moonlight is property of A24. We do not own nor claim any rights. Once again, thanks to our guests, the Ghouls Next Door, and go check out our friends Black Women Are Scary.